Peter, Sean, Jeremy, should I do it, Lauren?
Oh my goodness. Please just call me that. That's my nickname from now on. Should I do it? Should I do it? Should I do it?
Should I do it?
I like it.
It's a vibe.
Yes. Vibe check passed. Excellent.
One of those nicknames people be like, oh, what's the story behind that? And then you're like, well.
I was on a podcast once.
Welcome to I'd Buy That for $1, a podcast about inexpensive, common, and underappreciated records that are waiting to be rediscovered. I'm your host, Sean Hartman, and I regret to inform everyone that I will be boycotting this episode.
Why?
I'm sorry, but there's just no way I can discuss in good conscience the critically maligned 1979 album Dynasty by Kiss.
Oh, Sean, you're mistaken. Like I usually am. This is not the Kiss disco album Dynasty. This is the band Dynasty, the funk band.
Oh, so we're talking about Leon Silver's The Third then.
Yeah. Are you still
All right,
boycotting?
Well, no, I can dig it. Let's go. Proceed. Who else is here?
Wow, that was some role reversal. I am co-host Jeremy Ruggles, and I'm a salesman for Lola Solar. And you could get free solar panels and save half off on your electricity.
I'll keep that in mind.
You got any promo codes for us, or?
It's like Lights of Los Angeles, huh?
Nice.
Huh? Lola?
Nice.
Beautiful. Well, I am co-host Peter Cook, pronunciation advisor for Solar Records.
Shut up.
That's how they say it.
Wait, so are you helping the people at Solar Records pronounce things, or are you just helping the world at large learn how to pronounce Solar?
I'm helping the world at large pronounce the label Solar, because why isn't it solar? But that's how they always say it. If you watch anything about Dick Griffey, Solar. So there it is.
Well, you're doing God's work, Peter.
And who's the guest?
Should I go?
Should you do it? Yes, you should do it.
I'm Lauren, ambassador of Singing Loudly at Karaoke, Talking Heads Division.
Ooh.
And this is my second adventure on this podcast.
Nice.
Ooh,
Yeah.
very clever. This is your second adventure, Lauren. I was saying just before we started here that I realized this episode is going to air 1 day shy of a year from the last time you were on.
My goodness.
Can you believe? I can't believe it.
Neither can I. So much has happened in a year. What a way to mark that anniversary.
Well, I guess we've started a good tradition.
Here, I'd buy that birthday.
Yeah.
You'll have to have me
Once a
on
year.
every year at this time.
Every year at the same point. Yep, for the rest of our lives.
Oh, Jesus. Here we go.
Well, before we get into the record that you came to talk about, Lauren, since it's been almost a year, why don't you tell our listeners who you are? Just a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So my name is Lauren. I'm based in Toronto, Canada, where weed is legal. And I collect records. I've been collecting records for quite a while, and sometimes I play those records out in bars for people, which I was actually able to do quite recently. It was really fun to do that again since the pandemic started.
What was your peak song during that set?
Oh my gosh, that's a great question. I think it was probably Here I Am by Dynasty from this record.
Wow.
Or possibly Glow of Love by Change. That's a good one. Always a
Nice.
favorite.
That was the,
Very good one.
that was the other album you considered doing for this.
That's right.
episode,
Yeah.
right? Well,
Yeah.
I'm glad you're bringing your peak material to our podcast.
Nothing but the best for I'd Buy That for $1.
That's right. Happy to be here.
So yes, you came to talk about Dynasty, The Second Adventure.
That's
Correct.
right. Yeah, so I brought along Dynasty's The Second Adventure, which actually is their third album. You would think it's their second, but their second album is actually called Adventures in the Land of Music. So this is their second adventure, their third album. And I found out about Dynasty and this album because of the track Here I Am, which was featured on Madlib's Black Soul, which is a really great, just like record of samples of disco and soul music from the 70s and 80s. And they sampled Here I Am on the very first track. As a side note, I would highly recommend people search out Black Soul. It's a really, really great album. You can't find it on Spotify, but the whole thing is on YouTube. And I think Here I Am is like the third song they sample on the first the first track.
Right around there. It's funny enough, I checked that out today just because I was curious if any of these tracks had been sampled on anything. And it's not just like a small section of the song; it's like a large portion of the song. It's kind of like a mixtape almost, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that was really cool. I'll have to check out the rest of that Madlib joint.
Yeah, it's really good. Like I said, it's not on Spotify, but it's only samples, and there's actually a Spotify playlist with all of those samples that you can listen to instead.
Interesting.
So should we check out Here I Am?
Yeah, let's do it.
Side A, track 1 from The Second Adventure. And this is on Solar Records, 1981.
I love that track. I think it's a standout, like great first track on the album. Great disco soul duet about a guy who's ready to commit to a relationship. And I love that the bass like really captures the melody at the beginning of the song and just carries through the whole song. It's a good mix of like orchestral disco strings and funk with that bass and like the 4 on the floor beat. I just think it's a perfect song.
And that bass is played by none other than Leon Silvers III, who one of the marks of him as a producer and songwriter in the albums that he worked on was that he used the bass as a more melodic instrument than just about any other bass player in R&B at the time. So he had a very distinctive approach to that. And yeah, it shows really well on songs like this.
I was impressed by how both funky and poppy most of this album is.
Yeah, I think on a couple songs, like within the song, there is more than one bass track, and one would be kind of like funky on the bottom, and then I'd hear like melodic runs that I'm sound like a different bass track looped on top.
That could be because aside from Leon, there's two other bassists credited on this album. Foster Silvers, his brother, and Kenneth Gant of Midnight Star.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so there might be multiple basses going on at some points.
Wow.
I'd also read that Leon kind of got his start as a producer by doing like very sketchy DIY multi-tracking on like a portable cassette player, and was like hand making instruments and practicing like how far away from his little cassette player they had to be to get the sounds just right. So one of the rare pros of multi-tracking at this point.
Oh, that sounds like 15-year-old me with like the dual tape decks.
Mm-hmm.
And like it just keeps getting more and more faded with each track you add.
Yeah. Decay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this song and the album really straddles the line between like funk soul of the 70s, like moving into the early 80s with like more like synthesizers and moogs. It's sort of like a blend of those two different instrumentation.
Yeah, because I mean, a lot of these people had been in the music industry for quite some time and had lived through like a few different shifts in popular R&B music, but they were remaining versatile and keeping up with the trends while still maintaining elements of previous subgenres and whatnot.
Totally. Yeah, if you look at the album cover from left to right, you've got William Shelby, Nidra Beard, Leon Silvers III in the center looking very suave, Linda Carrier, and Kevin Spencer. And all of them are like in other bands in Solar Records and have like a lot of experience in the music industry. The back of the album has members of Dynasty and other folks from Sola, which stands for Sound of Los Angeles Records, including Dick Griffey, who was one of the founders of the label and produced many of the albums that they released. He's in the center of the album, or sorry, of the picture on the back. Pretty sure that's him kneeling down with folks sort of crowding around.
Oh, kneeling down on the very front.
Yeah, that's right. He's also thanked on the album notes along with a lot of the other solo staff.
Do you know what other big-time Los Angeles West Coast label Dick Griffey was instrumental in starting?
Soul Train?
A little later on.
Which one?
Well, this is in the 90s. This is in the early 90s, I'm thinking. This is I don't know if this is very common knowledge. Death Row's in the motherfucking house.
Oh,
wow.
Peter with a swear. I liked that.
I'm quoting here.
and I quote.
Yeah, Suge Knight and Dr. Dre went to Dick Griffey, and Dick Griffey was instrumental in helping them found Death Row.
Huh.
And then later, I think, sued Suge Knight because, of course, Suge Knight didn't give him the money deserved for his involvement.
Shocked.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wild. That's quite a left turn for him.
Yeah. Yeah. Jumping way ahead, though. Let's go back to this late 70s, early 80s, in this time period that we're talking with Dynasty, Leon Silvers. So what's our background on Dynasty here? I wasn't really familiar with them at all going into this episode when Lauren said that she wanted to do this record. I mean, I think, I'd seen some of the records around, but I definitely hadn't listened to them. Sean, I'm guessing, was familiar?
Fairly familiar. I don't own any of their LPs, but I have a 12-inch of their single, I Don't Want to Be a Freak, but
Nice.
I Can't Help Myself. And I've been jamming that one at gigs for a while. So kind of weird that I haven't picked up another one of their records, because I do love that track. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those disco groups that you see in the bins all the time, and I've kind of always thought, like, I need to like figure out which are like the really good Dynasty records. So here we are.
Jeremy?
I know both the Kiss and Jay-Z albums called Dynasty, and that's it.
Well, yeah, there was the cold open to one of our Patreon episodes, patreon.com/IBuyThatPodcast, starts with me telling Sean that Lauren was going to do a Destiny record. And he's like, no, Dynasty. You're thinking of the Jacksons.
Oh my gosh.
So that shows just how little I knew. But of course, yeah, I did know of Leon Silvers, and the Silvers and Dick Griffey and Solar Records. But hey, I'm learning more now. So I'm so glad that you brought this one. And, this is a good one to do because it seems like it's not necessarily critically very high rated. It's kind of been overlooked and underappreciated. And hey, what better podcast?
Yeah, that's our bag.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because like Dynasty has 6 records, and I feel like the first 3 are, which this one is the 3rd, those are like all hits. They're just solid records. But then after that, they didn't really release anything that's like of note. I think this is sort of like the pinnacle, the peak of their success.
They only had 2 adventures in them, I guess.
Only 2 adventures, so sad. But they also made it to Your Piece of the Rock. I almost said Top of the Rock, but you know what I mean. That's the name of their first album.
There we go. For the true heads. Well, how about we do another track? Let's hear what else this album has to offer before we talk more about the background of Dynasty.
Sure. So the next track I wanted to play is called Love in the Fast Lane, which is the first track of the second side. It's got a great horn section, and it's an anthem about setting boundaries. And I really love the line, "I just can't let my heart take a back seat on a freeway to a dead end." It's about, a declaration of self-love. Love it.
Wow.
And the exact opposite message of Life in the Fast Lane by the Eagles.
Precisely.
I was about to go there and decided not to, and then Jeremy did it for me.
I'll go there. I'll take the cheap shots.
All right, side B, track 1, Love in the Fast Lane. I don't have the numbers in front of me, and I don't know if you have them I don't know if you have them, Lauren, but I'm surprised this album wasn't a bigger hit, because I feel like I think the first track that we listened to, Here I Am, I think that was a minor hit, but I don't think any of the other songs charted. And, hearing like that one right there, 1981 seems like it really could have hit.
Oh, totally. That track and Here I Am are the only ones that cracked the top 40 R&B charts. The rest of them didn't. So
Love in the Fast Lane did also get released as a single and do a little bit. Okay, yeah. Mm-hmm. But even then, I'm surprised they weren't bigger. Like that they weren't, like really huge hits. Mm-hmm. This seems like pop gold to me, but...
Yeah. Well, I mean, at this period, though, like 79 to 82, there was just so many amazing, boogie, disco, post-disco records, R&B records coming out, that some things just inevitably were going to get lost in the shuffle.
Yeah. Well, and I think Solar Records alone was cranking them out at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah, they really were. I think the late 70s, like when Solar was, and I always want to say Solar Records.
Oh, it's fine.
When they were founded, it wasn't really an ideal time because by this point, many large record companies had sort of started taking significant market share from independent and Black-owned labels. And then other major record companies had also started like Black music divisions as well. So they were sort of cannibalizing that market and had a lot more money to pump into like promotion and marketing. And I think that's what's really sad about Dynasty Records and other records on the label is that they just didn't get a lot of backing or promotion.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they were kind of the Motown of the time, weren't they? For a brief period.
Yeah, totally. They were like the Motown of LA. Yeah, you kind of get the impression, kind of like Motown, that Solar was like this close-knit family with people performing and writing and producing on different albums for different bands. It just feels like this, really magical place that just never really took off in the same way.
Speaking of family, how many people are singing in this band?
I don't have the exact count. There's 5 people officially in the band, as you can see on the cover, but there are quite a few other folks who lent their voices to the album, and I don't know how many people there were.
It looks like it might be 5.
Okay, so you can count it. It's not that many.
Yeah, on Discogs, I'm seeing Leon Silvers, William Shelby, Kevin Spencer, and Linda. How do you pronounce her last name?
Carrier. That's how
Carrier.
Yeah.
Linda Carrier and Nidra Silvers.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the people credited. There may be more. Who knows?
I'm just looking at the notes here of the actual record, and it doesn't actually list who sang which track, which is unfortunate, but you can imagine that like they'd just be in the studio and someone would walk by and like, hey, you want to lend your vocals on the track, sort of thing.
Yeah, because it felt like a different singer every song, pretty much. Or like it must all 5 be singing leads at different points.
Yes, I think they are.
It's a lot of different voices on this thing.
Which makes sense because the whole point of this group was that they were presenting as like a disco supergroup. I mean, even the name Dynasty was because of their intent to just like take the charts by storm with all the talent contained in this group. So sharing the lead vocal duties makes sense with that kind of a presentation.
Mm-hmm.
And as we will learn, Leon Silvers wasn't even always in the group.
Yeah, this might be a good time to dive into a little bit of the history of Dynasty. If you will allow, I can dive into that.
Let's do it.
Yes, let's allow, yes.
Should I go? Okay. So as we've all kind of alluded to, Dynasty was really like the brainchild of Leon Silvers III, who grew up in a musical household in Nashville and was the second oldest in a musical family of 9 kids. And I just want to say, quick anecdote, I actually bought Dynasty's second record, Adventures in the Land of Music, in Nashville in a dollar bin. So I kind of feel connected to Leon in that way. He formed the band The Little Angels with some of his siblings, and then they changed their name to the Silvers, who are best known for their hits Misdemeanor and Only One Can Win, which was sampled on Jay Dilla's Donuts. So Leon was like a multi-instrumentalist and played a bunch of instruments, bass, keyboard, guitar, and went on to learn production work with Freddie Perrin when the Silvers recorded with MGM. Perrin had previously worked with Motown artists, including the Jackson 5, and I think there's always, like, in my brain, there's always been a connection between the Silvers and the Jackson 5 because they've sounded so similar, so maybe that's part of it. But Leon went on to be the in-house producer on the Solar label and sort of developed this really innovative style. So he also produced for Gladys Knight, Evelyn Champagne King, and others. Wikipedia claimed that he also produced for Ahmed Jamal, which feels like a bit of a stretch. The only link I could find there was that Ahmed Jamal's cover of the Silvers' Misdemeanor, which was written by Leon. But if anyone out there knows of a song by Ahmed Jamal that Leon Silvers produced, I would love to hear it. But anyway, he essentially formed Dynasty after introducing them to Dick Griffey at Solar Records. This is their third album, but the first two records was the band was just Nidra Beard, Linda Carrier, and Kevin Spencer. Beard and Carrier met in LA and were already seasoned performers before joining Dynasty. They, along with Spencer, also toured with the Silvers and stepped in for some of the younger members of the Silvers who were underage and couldn't perform at some of the clubs that they toured at. So the second adventure is really when Leon officially joined Dynasty. He had already produced their first two albums and written most of their songs. I don't know what led to him joining the band, but I do know that for a short time he was actually married to Nidra Beard, so maybe that's it, not really sure. William Shelby, who was in another Solar band called Lakeside, also joined the group after writing and playing synths on their first two records. And as I mentioned...
Fantastic Voyage. Lakeside's Fantastic Voyage, right?
Yes.
Yes, that's right.
The classic.
Yeah, put that one on the playlist for sure. But yeah, the album, as I mentioned, only had 2 top 40 R&B hits. We just heard them both, Love in the Fast Lane and Here I Am. And I personally think it is their best record.
Their pinnacle.
That's right.
Yeah, having not heard any others, I mean, I love this one. Spending a few weeks with it in preparation for this. The songs really they're pretty instant, but man, they just get better the more you get familiar with them. And there may be a couple points where some of the songs maybe start to seem like they're falling into a little bit of a formula, but overall I really like this record.
Definitely some parallels, I thought, to Midnight Star, where like when you listen to it subsequently, you notice like more and more layers kind of tucked in there. It's very dense mixes with a lot of interesting stuff that rewards
and
listening back again.
When we discuss more of the players, I know I mentioned that the bassist is Midnight Star, but it doesn't end there. There's other Midnight Stars on here, so we'll talk about that a little later. But
shall we play another track?
Yeah, if you're ready, I think we can give them a little bit more of this second adventure here. What do we want to do?
I was thinking Revenge, which is the track immediately after Love in the Fast Lane. I really like this one. It was actually written by Nidra Beard, and she also wrote a lot for Shalimar, including their big hit, A Night to Remember. I hope she made a lot of money off that one. It also features Shelby on the Moog and one of the Silver sisters, Patricia, on the synths.
Nice. Yeah. Let's check out that track. Side B, track 2.
Here I am, knocking at
So we talked earlier about how there's this kind of like pop funk crossover, and that song I think is a perfect example of it. And it kind of reminds me of some of the like the Minneapolis funk happening, you know, Prince, The Time, Jimmy Jam, and Terry Lewis. And I remember that there's a little bit of a Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis connection going on here. Apparently, Leon Silvers is the one that introduced them to Dick Griffey. And after they both got fired from The Time for missing a concert, they used that connection to launch their careers as two of the biggest, most successful producers of all time.
Wild.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm surprised I had not heard of Dick Griffey before any of this. He's so interwoven.
Yeah, I mean, I think we briefly mentioned it. We talked earlier that he's Soul Train too, right, Lauren?
Yeah, exactly. Dick Griffey is such an interesting character, and reading up about him for this episode, I was like shocked by just how monumental a figure he is for someone that I'd like really never heard of before. He moved to LA in the late 60s and became a music promoter. He promoted artists like Aretha Franklin, Al Green. He also represented the Jackson 5 and Stevie Wonder on some of their tours. So when Soul Train moved to LA from Chicago in the early 70s, Griffey was hired on as a talent coordinator. And then in 1975, they formed Soul Train Records. Some of Shalimar's like early records are on that label, but then Don Cornelius left Soul Train, and the name changed to Solar, Sound of Los Angeles Records. So he clearly has like a pretty big imprint on the sound of this label and like all these musicians coming together. He just seems like such a mentor and like someone who really guided people into the industry. But yeah, I'd never really heard of him before.
Wow, he had his fingerprint on at least 3 generations of music then.
Yeah.
Between this, Soul Train, and then Death Row. Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. But yeah, it's kind of interesting because he also rushed a lot of Solar's recordings in the early 80s to get out of a distribution deal that they had with RCA. So I think like kind of what we were talking about before with Dynasty and some of the other bands on the label having like, you know, not as much of a cultural imprint. Like they didn't make as much of a splash, even though the sound is like so incredible. It seems like because he was rushing a lot of these releases, it led to a lot of marketing and promotion issues, and is likely what led to the label just sort of being defunct by the late 80s, which is really too bad.
I know, it's sad, and it actually kind of reminded me of a weird parallel that I drew in my mind was Master P No Limit Records, where they were just cranking those things out in the late 90s, like production line, just every week someone Silk the Shocker, and it's just dropping one after another. And then what happened to that label? I don't know. They were on top for like a minute, and then just it's like overwhelmed themselves or something.
Yeah.
Overzealous.
It's a formula that seemed to have worked for like Motown, but I think the only difference is that with Sola, like it was just a totally different climate, right? Like there were so many independent labels that were just being like totally bought up and eaten up by other larger record labels, and so it was just so impossible for them to compete.
It's a damn shame because some fine music.
I know. But Sola actually was relaunched in the UK in 2018. I don't know what they're actually doing. It was hard to find like what, if any, releases have been put out since then. But Dick Griffey died in 2010. But then his family, including his daughter, Caroline Griffey, are releasing records, apparently. She's actually in the new Shalimar that just got back together.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
All these, I didn't know these things had happened.
Well, so says Wikipedia and other sites that I found, but it's like, it's not, I guess they're still suffering from that lack of promotion and marketing because I certainly hadn't heard of it.
They're in an even worse environment now of like corporate monopoly over what music gets marketed and distributed.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
But I digress.
I have a little info on some of the musicians on the instrumentation on this record. I know we mentioned the players on the multiple basses we were talking about, but on the drums we have Melvin Gentry from Midnight Star. So we have a Midnight Star bassist, we have a Midnight Star drummer. Another drummer that's on here is Wardell Potts Jr., who was the house drummer for Solar. So he's on recordings by The Whispers, Shalimar. Funny enough, he's also the drummer on Will Smith's Miami from the album Big Willie Style.
Get out.
Love that song.
Yeah. On guitar, we have a few guitarists. We have Ernest Pepper Reed Jr. He seems to be from Ohio, and I'm guessing he was a session player for Solar. He died at the age of 44 in 1999. We also have a guy named Richard Randolph, who played on a lot of Solar releases. He just passed away in April of 2021. And Stephen Shockley, the guitarist from the Ohio funk group that we mentioned earlier, Lakeside, of Fantastic Voyage fame. And they're still active, and he's still playing with them.
That's amazing.
To this day. Electric piano, we have Bo Watson of Midnight Star. So, yeah, like Midnight Star are kind of the backing band, effectively the backing band on this. On synth, we did, Lauren, you mentioned Patricia Silvers being on synth earlier, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did.
We also have Joey Gallo, a Solar session player, and Michael Nash from the group Rose Royce. Do we know what song they did?
Oh, are they Car Wash?
You are correct.
Oh my God.
No, that band jams. I listened to one of their albums. Somebody was like, you should actually listen to that band, and they jam.
Yeah.
For real.
Yeah, I checked out a couple tracks beyond that, and I was like, holy crap. I never thought to look into the Car Wash band.
Yeah.
Now you know.
Yeah, now I know, and now our listeners do too. Additional percussion is provided by Wayne Milstein and Kenny Hudson. Both seem to be more Solar players. I know Kenny Hudson, right around the same time, recorded with I Buy That alum Norman Connors. So that's some of the other players providing the instrumentation on this record. Sean, do you have a Spotify playlist related to this episode?
Yeah, I've been quickly assembling it after the Kiss playlist that I had made in preparation for this episode. But
did our wonderful guest Lauren give you a few suggestions for that?
Yes, Lauren made it much easier. So the playlist that we co-assembled features many of the artists and songs we've been talking about on the show. There's some Dynasty tracks from this record that we are not featuring in this episode, as well as a track from their second adventure album, Give Your Love to Me. There's some Shalimar on here, plus the song Midas Touch from the Midnight Star record Headlines that we covered. Mm-hmm. There's Evelyn Champagne King on here, The Whispers, Carrie Lucas, the big hit from Lakeside, Fantastic Voyage. There is the song Misdemeanor by Foster Silvers that Leon produced and wrote. That is just an amazing track. There's an early Janet Jackson song that Leon Silvers was involved with, and I put some Kashif on there because you just got to. And I put a track from an early I'd Buy That for $1 episode where two of the songs were written and produced by Leon Silvers. Does anybody remember what album that was?
An early episode of ours?
Yes.
Bohannon?
No.
Couldn't be Bohannon, no.
No. It's a record from 1984, so 3 years after the one we're talking about today.
The Brothers Johnson.
That's right.
Oh, damn. Nice.
So I put the song Lovers Forever from that album on there, and closing off the playlist with a much more recent Leon Silvers track. It's him collaborating with the artist Dame Funk from the Invite the Light record. A song called Glide Tonight that you can hear some much more recent Leon Silvers work from 2015, actually.
Nice.
Wow.
So he's still out there, still producing, writing, obviously a little less active than he was decades ago, but not retired and still has a lot of talent to give.
Mm-hmm. Maybe one day he'll write a memoir and we can learn so much more about his life. I would totally read it.
Maybe. I also found, too late to listen to the whole thing, but there is an episode of Questlove Supreme with a full extended Leon Silvers interview, which I believe is the only like extended interview he's ever done, or at least that can be found at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're interested in learning more about this legendary producer and musician who was just one element of this record, then maybe check that out.
Mm-hmm.
So where can we find that Spotify playlist, Sean?
That Spotify playlist is on Spotify, and just search just search I'd Buy That podcast, all one word, to find this and every other I'd Buy That for $1 official playlist.
Excellent. Well, Lauren, before we wrap up with Dynasty here, is there anything that you would like to plug while you're here?
Oh, goodness, putting me on the spot here. No, I don't have anything to plug, but I sometimes post my collection on Instagram, and folks can find me at wordy_rappinghood on Instagram.
Wordy_a_rappinghood.
Just
on
like the Tom
Instagram.
Tom Club song. That's right.
Yeah, we learned talking to Lauren before the episode that unlike the American death cult where we've just kept everything open for years, apparently Canada's just now kind of starting to let some things happen. So not a lot for you to do, I reckon.
Well, it's province by province, but where I am in Ontario, we just opened up the bars and clubs and things. I have tickets to go to concerts next month. I'm super excited. But I was really excited to be able to play and DJ music at a bar for the first time in a year and a half. And hopefully I'll be doing it again soon, and folks can find out about that on my Instagram page.
Wordy Rapping Hood.
That's right.
Well, we want to thank you, Lauren. And did you have anything else that you wanted to say about Dynasty before we get on out of here?
Yeah, if folks are shopping for, records, dollar bin or whatever, if you find anything on Solar Records, just buy it. Don't think twice. You'll be pleasantly surprised, because it's a real shame that we don't know more about this label and that it's not more well known, but hopefully folks can find it and discover this music on their own and really enjoy it.
Only if you like fun or feeling good, though, right?
Yeah, if you don't like feeling good, I would not recommend any albums from this label. If you like to be sad, if you like to be upset, you might want to look into, oh shit, what was that other label that...
Light in the Attic, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, some like Japanese, minimalism or something from Light in the Attic.
Yeah.
From Light in the Attic.
Yeah, some reissues. No, what was the other label that Dick Griffey was involved in with what's-his-face?
Oh, Death Row Records?
Yeah, if you like to feel sad, maybe you can listen to something on Death Row Records.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel good usually when I'm listening to Death Rows.
All right.
Yeah,
well,
I mean, it's a West Coast party, yeah.
Might be dangerous, There's some realities we got to acknowledge,
that's
but
true.
it's still fun. Oh, okay. Where are we going with the end here? Which track?
Okay, the last track I want to play is called High Time I Left You. It's the
High Time I Left You, Baby.
That's right. High Time, parentheses, I Left You, Baby, which is the second to last track on the album.
Yeah. And it's hard to read. I'm trying to read who actually wrote this, but...
It looks like it was D. Myers and Kay Spencer. I don't know who D. Myers is, but Kevin Spencer from Dynasty co-wrote it.
Yeah, and actually, it seems like there's a pretty good versatility of writers on this album. It's a collective effort. I mean, and I get that impression that's what a lot of Solar releases are, kind of a family things, so to speak.
Totally.
Well, it's high time I left you, babies. I'm co-host Jeremy Ruggles, and this was I'd Buy That for $1.
I'm co-host Sean Hartman, and this was still I'd Buy That for $1.
And I am co-host Peter Cook, further confirming that this has been I'd Buy That for $1.
Thanks for coming on.
And
Thanks for coming on, Lauren, and putting up with us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
please come back sometime.
Happily. Next year.
Yep, 1 year from today.